Hollywood's light was never gentle. It was blinding, merciless, a golden furnace that burned brightest on the faces of women who seemed untouchable. The camera adored them, the audience worshipped them, and history dressed them in diamonds and silk. But if you listen closely, behind the applause and champagne laughter, there was another sound, the soft crack of a heartbreaking, the whisper of a rivalry, the sharp edge of cruelty hidden behind a smile. She smiled for the camera and cried when it turned away. The world saw fragile blossoms, but those who knew them best understood. These women were not porcelain dolls. They were roses with thorns, queens of glamour who ruled their kingdoms with charm when it suited them, and cruelty when it didn't. On the surface, they seemed to drift in satin and starlight. But the silver screen is a liar. Behind those velvet curtains, there were icy stares that could silence a rival across the room, cutting words delivered like blades, and acts of ambition so ruthless they left scorched earth behind. They did not wait for destiny to write their tragedies. They wrote them themselves, often in blood ink no one dared read aloud. And yet, cruelty has its own perfume in Hollywood. These women dazzled even as they destroyed. The role made her famous. It also broke her. They clapped when she entered the room. But no one noticed when she left. For every betrayal, there was brilliance. For every cruel word, a performance that would live forever. Their names stayed on posters, but not always on the lips of those they loved. Tonight, we step closer, not to judge, but to remember, to hear the whispers in the shadows of 17 women whose legends were beautiful, dangerous, and unforgettable. Joan Crawford was no delicate flower. She rose from the grit of Texas back streets, dancing on sore feet, until her ambition carried her into the gilded gates of MGM. The studio dressed her in satin, but it was iron that lived beneath her skin. She understood the bargain. In Hollywood, survival was not given, it was taken, and Joan took it with both hands. Her cheekbones could cut glass, but it was her discipline that drew blood. Assistants whispered her name like a warning. Rivals learned that her smile could turn to ice before the champagne had even warmed in its glass. Even in her home, her children felt the sting of her relentless order, each detail in their lives polished to match her own immaculate control. She smiled for the camera and cried when it turned away. On screen she was tenderness itself, the mother who would sacrifice, the lover who would endure, the heroine who could forgive. But off-screen, her love came bound with rules, her warmth laced with fire. The role made her famous. It also broke her. To watch Joan Crawford was to see beauty wielded like a weapon. To know her was to risk being cut. Bette Davis never needed a script to command a scene. She carried her lines in her eyes, eyes that could slice through silk, through pretense, through the very marrow of a man who thought he could outmatch her. Immortalized in song, adored by audiences, those eyes were never ornaments. They were weapons. On set, she was fearless. She spoke when others stayed silent, tore through egos with a glance, and left more than one director trembling with exhaustion. Her artistry was volcanic, erupting without warning, a molten mix of genius and fury. She clashed with studio heads, sparred with co-stars, and made it clear she would never be content with playing sweetness. She demanded roles with teeth, and she bit into life with the same hunger. The audience believed the kiss, but he'd already fallen out of love. That was Bette's truth. Love was never a performance she softened. Her cruelty was her honesty. She refused to smile if she didn't mean it. She refused to praise what she didn't admire. For some, she was unbearable. For others, unforgettable. Her eyes were not just beautiful. They were dangerous. Tallulah Bankhead never whispered. She stormed into rooms like thunder, her laughter rattling chandeliers, her wit slicing through silence before anyone had the chance to recover. With a cigarette dangling from her lips and a drink in her hand, she was both the party and the destruction of it. People turned to watch her, but they rarely knew whether to laugh, to blush, or to flee. Her beauty was undeniable, yet it was her tongue that left the deepest marks. She hurled insults like champagne corks, loud, sudden, impossible to ignore. Rivals shrank under her words. Lovers were paraded, mocked, discarded. She seduced husbands as easily as she crushed reputations, often in the same evening. Directors adored her brilliance, but feared her whims. She might deliver a performance of fire one day and vanish without warning the next. And yet, cruelty in Tallulah had its own dangerous glamour. The very people she scorched leaned in closer, hoping for a smile, desperate for her fleeting approval. They clapped when she entered the room, but no one noticed when she left. Tallulah was not a flame to be followed. She was a blaze to be survived, dazzling, untamed, and unforgettable. Marlene Dietrich never needed to speak to be cruel. Her silence was its own weapon, her glance colder than marble, her presence sculpted as if by some divine hand that understood both beauty and distance. Men adored her, women envied her, and rivals froze beneath the weight of her dismissive stare. She ruled not with volume, but with absence, with a coolness so precise it left others aching for warmth she would never give. On screen, she was the goddess of satin shadows, stepping from smoke and sequins as if desire itself had chosen her face. Off-screen, she remained the strategist, commanding, manipulative, a queen of seduction who measured power in broken hearts. She toyed with lovers the way she selected costumes, boldly, briefly, and always with perfect calculation. Her cruelty was surgical, refined. She knew where to press, when to withhold, how to wound without lifting her voice. Those who loved her often walked away shattered, forever haunted by the ghost of her perfume. Her name stayed on posters, but not on the lips of those she loved. Marlene Dietrich's greatest danger was not her beauty alone, but her refusal to ever let the world forget she was untouchable. Gloria Swanson moved through Hollywood like an empress in velvet, her presence commanding even when no words were spoken. In the silent era, her eyes did all the speaking, tender in a close-up, merciless in a contract meeting. She lived as though the world itself was her stage, and every person who crossed her path was cast in a supporting role they hadn't auditioned for. Her cruelty was not whispered about behind doors. It was declared. She knew her power, and she wielded it like a jeweled scepter. To rivals, she was unforgiving. To directors, she was demanding to the edge of tyranny. Assistants and lovers alike soon realized that devotion was never enough. Gloria expected worship, and even that sometimes failed to satisfy. The role made her famous. It also broke her. Her certainty was as sharp as her gaze. She knew her worth, and she expected the world to bow in recognition. Some did. Many suffered. And yet, to audiences, she remained incandescent, a queen of the screen who gave everything to the illusion. To know Gloria Swanson was to be dazzled and destroyed in the same breath, forever marked by her imperious shadow. Mae West made the world laugh and tremble. With her slow, drawling wit and curves that seemed to wink before she spoke, she owned the stage, the screen, and every room she entered. Her humor sparkled like champagne, but it was laced with venom. Rivals felt her barbs buried beneath a smile. Lovers felt her dismissal wrapped in silk. She took what she wanted and left without apology, leaving others to marvel at her audacity. Behind the diamonds and the endless innuendos, Mae carried a steel independence that frightened the men who tried to control her. She outwitted censors who wanted to silence her, humiliated rivals who tried to outshine her, and bent Hollywood's rules until they cracked beneath her heels. Her cruelty was not physical, but verbal, the kind that lingers longer than bruises. A single smirk from May could cut through an ego, a reputation, even a career. And she did it all while making the audience roar with laughter. The audience believed the kiss. But he'd already fallen out of love. For them she was delicious. For those who crossed her, she was merciless. Mae West didn't just smile, she smiled with teeth. Katharine Hepburn was a flame that refused to be contained. She wore trousers when women were told not to, strode across sets with the gait of someone who never asked permission, and spoke with a candor that rattled Hollywood's polished veneers. Admirers called her bold, rivals muttered another word: cruel. Her independence was intoxicating, but it cut like glass. Co-stars who expected deference often found themselves dismissed with a flick of her sharp tongue. Directors who hoped for pliancy quickly learned she bent for no one. Rivals complained of her arrogance, but Katharine would have laughed at the word. She was not born to bow. She smiled for the camera and cried when it turned away. Yet in her case, the tears were not weakness, but frustration at the world's insistence on taming her fire. Hepburn's cruelty was not petty. It was rooted in refusal. The refusal to soften her edges, to shrink her intellect, to compromise her independence. Yes, she left wounds. She bruised egos, scorched tempers and burned bridges. But she also left a legend too strong to be forgotten. Katharine Hepburn did not flicker. She blazed, arrogant, untamed, and unforgettable. Ava Gardner's beauty was the kind that silenced a room. Conversations faltered, glasses paused mid-air, and eyes turned helplessly toward her. But beauty was never her only weapon. Cruelty walked beside it, sharp and glittering. She drank with abandon, loved with fire, and fought with the same reckless passion that made her unforgettable. Men adored her, but few survived her. Lovers discovered that her kisses could heal one moment and wound the next. When she was hurt, she lashed out. When she was restless, she betrayed. Ava did not apologize. She simply moved on, leaving others to sift through the ruins of their devotion. The role made her famous. It also broke her. Her cruelty was not calculated, but instinctive, the byproduct of a wild heart that refused to be caged. She could love deeply, but when the warmth cooled, she left nothing but ashes. Her name stayed on posters, but not on the lips of those she loved. To touch Ava Gardner was to risk both ecstasy and ruin. For beneath the glamour, beneath the velvet allure, lay the sting of a scorpion's tail. Swift, merciless, unforgettable. Lana Turner was discovered at a soda fountain, sipping Coca-Cola like any other teenage girl. But Hollywood looked at her and saw a dream. The kind of dream men pinned to their walls, and women envied in silence. She seemed angelic, a goddess wrapped in silk and light. Yet dreams, when touched, can cut like knives. Behind her luminous smile was a woman who wielded cruelty like perfume, invisible, intoxicating, and deadly. Lana lived within scandals as though they were her natural habitat. Her romances burned fast and bright, leaving men scorched, some broken beyond repair. Rivals paid in humiliation, undone not by her fists, but by the effortless power of her presence. The audience believed the kiss, but he'd already fallen out of love. For Lana, cruelty was not always deliberate. Often it was simply the storm of being near her. To love her was to be swept into that storm, to risk being shattered by forces you could not control. Her name stayed on posters, but not on the lips of those she loved. To the world, she was divine. To those who drew too close, Lana Turner was dangerous. Barbara Stanwyck carried the weight of hardship like armor. She rose from poverty with a spine of steel, never asking for pity, never offering it in return. On screen, she gave audiences heroines of fire and resilience. Off screen, she was disciplined, exacting, and fiercely private. The studio called her professional. Those who worked too close sometimes called her cruel. Her edge was never loud. It came in silences that lingered, in a sharp word delivered without hesitation, in the cool dismissal of anyone who failed to meet her standards. She demanded perfection not only from herself, but from all who surrounded her, and she forgave little weakness. They clapped when she entered the room, but no one noticed when she left. Barbara's cruelty was not flamboyant, not theatrical like others. It was subtle, enduring, the kind of chill that left people questioning themselves long after the moment had passed. And yet, the same hardness that wounded also defined her greatness. She was beauty forged in struggle, strength wrapped in grace. Barbara Stanwyck was a rose with iron thorns, radiant to behold, unforgettable to audiences, and dangerous to touch too closely. Jean Harlow's platinum hair shimmered like a halo, catching every spotlight, dazzling every eye. She was Hollywood's platinum flame, luminous, magnetic, impossible to ignore. To fans, she was sweetness incarnate, a girl who smiled as though the world had given her nothing but joy. But those who drew closer learned another truth. Sweetness could turn sharp. Her cruelty was never calculated, but it flickered like fire when she felt cornered. A sharp word, a flash of impatience, a sudden dismissal that cut deeper than intended. Jean struck out when the cage of stardom pressed too tightly around her. She smiled for the camera and cried when it turned away. Stardom weighed heavily, and in that restless weight, cruelty sometimes slipped free. Her beauty was her blessing and her curse. Lovers adored her, but many left scarred, singed by the spark of her temper, the sudden frost of her moods. Yet her cruelty, like her life, burned fast and faded quickly, leaving behind the ache of both wonder and regret. Jean Harlow was not built to last. She was a flame, platinum, dazzling, and brief, burning too brightly to ever be forgotten. Veronica Lake's hair was more than style, it was legend. That golden wave fell across one eye like a secret she would never share, turning her into the very embodiment of the femme fatale. On screen, she lured audiences into shadows they longed to enter. Off screen, she lived the role too well. Directors found her temper as unpredictable as her beauty. She could charm one moment, devastate the next. Peers often felt the frost of her dismissal, and anyone who disappointed her discovered the precision of her cruelty. Her beauty disarmed, her words destroyed. She wielded language like a dagger, soft in tone but sharp in effect, leaving wounds that lingered long after the conversation ended. The audience believed the kiss, but he'd already fallen out of love. Veronica's allure was intoxicating, but it was rarely gentle. Those who came close to her flame often walked away, scorched, still haunted by the memory of her half-hidden gaze. She was unforgettable, not for kindness, but for the sting she left behind. Veronica Lake was more than Hollywood's dream. She was its warning, a femme fatale, both on and off the screen. Who bit back? Clara Bow was more than a star. She was the ignition of an era. Hollywood called her the it girl, but she was something far sharper than charm or sex appeal. She was fire in motion, the flapper flame who set the screen alight. Audiences adored her laughter, her daring, her reckless joy. Yet behind that brightness lay edges that could cut. Clara's childhood had carved wounds deep into her spirit, and sometimes those wounds became weapons. A rival might hear her scorn delivered in a single, unforgettable remark. A lover might discover that her warmth could turn to ice in an instant. She burned with passion, but that flame could scorch. In the studio halls, whispers followed her, about feuds, sudden tempers, betrayals half hidden by glamour. She gave herself completely to the screen, but in life she held parts back, closing doors with sharpness rather than tenderness. Clara Bow was adored by millions from afar, but up close she could be dangerous, a storm dressed as a star. She was the it girl, yes, but also the warning that desire, when wounded, does not always love. Sometimes it bites back. Elizabeth Taylor was a jewel the world could not look away from. Her violet eyes shimmered like eternal promises, and her beauty carried the gravity of legend. Men fell to her with helpless certainty, and women admired her with wary awe. But jewels are sharp as well as brilliant, and Elizabeth's glow often concealed the edge of cruelty. She loved with an intensity that was intoxicating, reckless, overwhelming. Yet when her love soured, it collapsed with thunderous force, leaving scars as deep as the passion that created them. Her beauty won her husbands, but her temper, her betrayals, her unrelenting will often lost her friends. She took what she wanted, a role, a lover, even another woman's marriage, without apology, as though destiny itself bent to her. And still, no matter the damage, she remained irresistible. Those who condemned her could not look away. Those who left her often returned, drawn back by the magnetism that lived in her presence alone. Elizabeth Taylor was not merely adored, she was survived. The jewel of Hollywood, polished to brilliance, dangerous in her cut. She shone, but she could wound. Hedda Hopper wore her cruelty not on her face, but in her hat. Those towering plumes and feathers were crowns for a queen who ruled with ink and whispers. She was not Hollywood's brightest star, nor its most graceful actress, but she built an empire more dangerous than beauty, the gossip column. Every morning her words landed with the weight of a blade. A single line could end a career. A rumor slipped between pleasantries could unravel a marriage. Hedda smiled in society, curtsied in salons, and sipped tea at glittering parties. But behind the typewriter she was merciless, sharpening her sentences into weapons. Actresses feared her, more than directors, more than censors, even more than scandal itself. For scandal could sometimes be survived, but a war with Hedda Hopper was often fatal. To be in her favor was to bask in the spotlight. To be in her sights was to feel the guillotine tilt toward your neck. Her cruelty was not a shadow, it was her crown. She thrived on it, lived for it, and ruled Hollywood with the terror of her pen. In Hedda's empire, reputation was currency, and she decided its worth. Jean Tierney moved like a dream folded into flesh, radiant and ethereal, a presence that lingered long after she left a room. Audiences adored her as if she were spun from starlight, but those closest saw a different reality, a beauty that carried a hidden edge and cruelty that surfaced in flashes like lightning behind calm skies. Her coldness to lovers could wound more deeply than betrayal. Her sharp words to rivals left lasting impressions, whispered in corridors long after she had passed. She smiled for the camera and cried when it turned away. Tierney's cruelty was subtle, refined, almost imperceptible, yet it cut straight through the heart of those who tried too hard to understand her. Her beauty was her weapon, her distance her cruelty. Friends often left bewildered, haunted by a presence that had given them both wonder and pain. Like smoke in the lungs, her danger was invisible at first, yet it clung, stubborn and undeniable. Jean Tierney did not need to shout to leave her mark. She haunted, she mesmerized, and she left those who drew near forever, aware that the most beautiful flame can also scorch. Zsa Gabor entered a room like a whirlwind of silk, diamonds, and laughter. She was flamboyant, decadent, impossible to ignore. Every gesture was a performance, every word a flourish. But behind the glamour lay cruelty sharpened into art. She slapped, she insulted, she dismissed, all with a laugh that made the room shiver and sparkle at the same time. For Zaza, cruelty was entertainment, a spectacle as dazzling as the jewels she adored. Lovers became punchlines, rivals became targets, and friends learned quickly that a compliment could turn into a cutting remark in the next breath. She wielded wit like a blade, painting her claws in red lacquer and showing them proudly. Nothing was private. Everything was a stage, every slight an opportunity for drama. They clapped when she entered the room, but no one noticed when she left. Zaza's cruelty was public, shameless, unforgettable, a glittering storm that left onlookers dazzled, charmed and wary all at once. She laughed, she shone, she stung. In the world of Hollywood's roses and thorns, Zaza Gabor was both bouquet and barb, impossible to resist and impossible to forget. 17 women, each a constellation in the night sky of Hollywood, shimmering, radiant, impossible to ignore. Yet their light was never simple. It was edged with shadows, sharpened by cruelty, tempered by survival. To speak of them now is to confront a paradox. Those who gave the world enchantment could also wound it with precision. Their beauty dazzled, their cruelty stung, and their legacy carries both in equal measure. Cruelty in Hollywood was not indulgence, it was armor. In a world built on illusion, where studios owned every smile and gossip dictated destinies, kindness was often weakness, softness a liability. These women learned early to fight, to strike first, to wield venom like a weapon that could protect as well as punish. Some hurt others by accident, others by meticulous design, but all left marks as vivid as their names on the marquee, and still their brilliance cannot be erased. Joan Crawford glows in black and white, her silhouette carved in fire and defiance, a steel magnolia whose perfection cuts through decades. Bette Davis smoulders, eyes daring the world not to look away, her genius fused with her temper, unforgettable in every frame. Ava Gardner storms across the screen, fierce and untamed, while Marlene Dietrich reigns from her marble throne, commanding attention with a glance colder than ice and sharper than diamonds. Their danger was inseparable from their magnetism, the reason we still whisper their names long after the cameras have dimmed. These women lived in extremes, laughter and cruelty, love and betrayal, brilliance and destruction. To know them was to risk both admiration and injury, to witness the collision of beauty and fire. Their cruelty was their shield, their flaw, and the mark that makes them unforgettable. They were not saints nor monsters, but forces of nature, each moving through life with a daring that few could endure. In Hollywood, beauty fades, but danger lingers. It is etched in celluloid, whispered in gossip, remembered in the stillness after the curtains fall. And the most dangerous beauty of all is memory, refusing to let go, demanding that we feel both awe and fear, tenderness and pain, long after the lights have dimmed. These women remind us that brilliance and cruelty can coexist, that the siren's song is never without a sting. To watch their lives is to walk along a knife's edge of glamour and danger, where every smile hides intention, every gaze carries power, and every legacy is a testament to the extremes of human passion. 17 stars, 17 storms. And when we close our eyes tonight, we carry them with us, radiant, untouchable, dangerous, and unforgettable.